Hey friends, and welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to chat with you guys about 5 things that I think most people get wrong when they think about health and nutrition from a dietitian standpoint, of course. Especially in the field of health and nutrition, I really try to avoid overcorrecting people on certain things because I feel like already people are at a vulnerable standpoint when they're talking about their own nutrition and the foods that they eat. And so people tend to get defensive when you come at them with all the things that they're doing wrong. And I don't really like coming from that standpoint to begin with, regardless. So I hate to come at it this way, but a lot of times I think that sometimes it's easier maybe to hear it from a YouTube video than from hearing it one-on-one with a dietitian. So maybe just coming from a non-judgmental, peaceful YouTube dietitian, maybe it'll hit home for some of you guys, and maybe you can tell me which of these misconceptions either you've had in the past or that you currently have now that maybe you can break the cycle of. Because as much as we want to think that it's all just about food, I think a lot of it is our relationship with food and how we feel about food and how we feel about our bodies and how we treat ourselves. So let's begin with number 1, the common misconception. These are in no particular order. The common misconceptions that I find people have around nutrition and health. Misconception number 1, healthy means eating perfectly. This is a huge one. So a lot of times when I tell people that I'm a dietitian, they'll rattle off all the different things that they're doing wrong in their diet and what they had yesterday for lunch and how they could have made that better, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's definitely one of the joys of being a dietitian, is that sense of guilt. I feel like I don't ever try to convey that I'm a judgmental person. I don't think any dietitian tries to do that, but a lot of times I think food is one of those things that we get really defensive over, and we put a lot of moral value on it. And so when we see a dietitian or we hear that someone is an expert in nutrition, we get a little bit like protective of our habits and maybe a little bit like projecting our own feelings of guilt and embarrassment about how we eat. But I hate that, because I think that food and eating healthy food does not mean that you have to be perfect all the time with it. Trust me, as a dietitian who is pregnant with a toddler at home, I certainly don't eat perfectly all the time. And that's for a lot of reasons, right? Like, I struggled with disordered eating in high school, and so one of the things for me that's really important is to have a balance in my way of eating so that I'm eating healthy most of the time, but I'm also having that flexibility to live my life and to not be perfect and not strive for an unhealthy perfectionism with food. And again, we see a lot of the what I eat in a days on YouTube and Instagram and things like that. And then we compare ourselves to that and feel like we don't measure up to that ideal, perfect scenario. But here's the truth. We're just seeing a highlight of that person's life. A lot of times, they're not eating that way all the time, and they are also imperfect. They're just not showing it on social media. And B, even if maybe they are eating that perfectly, their relationship with food is really, really toxic and maybe hinting towards that like perfectionistic, disordered eating or eating disorder tendency. Not saying that everyone that eats healthy is having an eating disorder, but hopefully you get what I'm saying. Healthy to me is making sure that you're having a balance most of the time. I hate the 80-20 rule, gets overused a lot, but eating healthy about 80% of the time, maybe 90% of the time, whatever feels good to you. And then having that space to have food just for the heck of having food, not just because it's a certain way or a certain nutrition profile. Life is all about having balance, and I think you can still claim yourself to be a healthy person even if you don't eat perfectly 100% of the time, right? The next thing that I think a lot of people get wrong about your health and nutrition is that your weight says everything about your health, which is just not true. Now, I think at first glance, when people hear this, they're thinking that I'm saying that being 800 pounds is healthy or being 80 pounds is also healthy. No, that's not at all what I'm saying, I promise. I don't have an extreme viewpoint on this misconception that I'm talking about. I really just want people to know that someone can be thin and be unhealthy, and someone can be, according to BMI standards, overweight, or just not within that healthy range on the BMI, because BMI is just not the best indicator of health, but they can be considered overweight and still be healthy. For example, a lot of athletes, especially male athletes, are going to have really big muscles. They're most likely going to be considered overweight or maybe even obese on the BMI scale, but they're going to be perfectly healthy because they're really active and maybe they have a really balanced way of eating and fueling for their workouts. So you can see where weight doesn't always equate to if you're healthy or not. So while I don't knock people for wanting to lose weight or for having that as a goal, like I think that's a perfectly fine goal as long as you're being healthy about it and your mindset is right with it. I don't knock people for that. I just strongly believe that it is the most beneficial thing for you to not only have a weight-related goal, but to also have goals and ways of measuring your progress beyond your weight. Because if weight is the only thing that you measure, you're gonna get really, really frustrated on something that is only just one tiny piece of the puzzle. I know that's frustrating for some to hear because that's the aesthetic part of health and nutrition, and that's the part that helps us feel confident, and maybe we want to fit into a certain dress or bikini or certain trousers that we used to fit in before. And that, again, that's okay with me. It's just maybe finding ways to think about it beyond just the weight is going to be the thing that's the healthiest for you mentally. So the best way that I can recommend doing this is to break up your overarching goal into little habits or actions that you can take. So if weight loss is your goal, what are the actions that it's going to take to get to that goal? So maybe it's meal prepping, because that's something you tend to fall off on. If you don't have something prepped, you tend to eat more fast food, and that contributes to weight gain. So what are some ways that you can fit in meal prep? Or what are some ways that you can start to plan and have a routine with meal prep to make that easier for you to lose weight? Or if exercise is your goal, how can you make time for exercise, or what is realistic? Maybe it's walking. Maybe it's going to the gym. Maybe the only thing that you can make time for is a 10-minute workout that's from YouTube or Apple Fitness or something on your phone. Whatever is going to work for you, you have to start somewhere. So I just recommend starting with actions versus just sticking to the weight as your only goal. Mistake number 3 that I find a lot of people do, and a lot, when I say a lot, I mean a lot of people do, is get stuck on the nuances of nutrition and health and fixate on those heavily, very heavily, and not focus on the big picture things that really move the needle with your health. So let's think of a couple examples for this one. Let's see. Recently in the news, we're seeing that red food dye is going to be banned in certain foods. And a lot of times you hear about seed oils and things like that, and how they're going to cause cancer, or how cruciferous vegetables have oxalates in them. And if you have too much of them, it can actually be bad for your thyroid. There's all sorts of things that nutrition influencers that don't actually have a background in nutrition, like they don't have a actual like college education in it. They're just like a chiropractor, or they're someone who lost weight themselves and now they're a nutrition coach. Yeah, I find a lot of information or fixation on those things comes from those types of influencers versus dietitian nutritionists and maybe actual certified health coaches are going to tell you to focus on behavior change. They're going to tell you to focus on what is the number one thing that you feel comfortable starting with. They're going to give you some boring advice or seemingly boring advice, like increasing your fruits and vegetables, having around 100 grams of protein, making sure that you're fueling every couple of hours. These things that seem so boring are actually what's going to help you the most versus fixating on things like chemicals that are in very, very tiny amounts in certain foods that are perfectly healthy, mind you, in those small amounts. The poison makes the dose, as they say. Those things just don't matter as much as influencers want you to believe. And by focusing on those tiny nuances versus big picture things like, are you getting your protein? Are you getting your fiber? Are you eating enough calories throughout the day so you're not hangry and that's not causing binge eating later in the day? You're gonna be better off focusing on what actually matters versus tiny details. I feel like a little bit that's kind of a form of procrastination for some people. Maybe some people do it on purpose and others don't do it on purpose, but they just are bogged down by all the information online that they just don't know what to do anymore. Totally understandable. I completely get where you're coming from, but definitely one of the more frustrating misconceptions that I see as a dietitian nutritionist because yeah, unfortunately, the algorithms online are really built for fear-based titles or titles that make you want to click, and that exciting, title is going to get more people and more views than someone who has a more boring and nuanced answer. That's not always what we tend to want to click. So just keep that in mind. Human psychology plays a big role in the content that we consume. And so if you find yourself clicking a lot more on fear-mongering content, you'll get more of that in your feed versus if you click more on like dietitians like myself or intuitive eating dietitians that have those longer-winded answers. Sorry, I know I'm long-winded. I'm sorry. That's just something that's not going to change quickly for me. But whatever you lean into online is what you're going to see more of. So I just suggest if you don't want to see all the fear-mongering stuff, just don't pay attention to it. Swipe up and just keep scrolling and you'll get better things in your algorithm. Your algorithm will learn that you don't like that crap. Misconception number 4, health is all about eating vegetables and exercising a lot. So, definitely that's part of health is like having nutrient dense foods and having a balance of foods and then getting sufficient exercise. That's definitely something that a lot of us need more of in our sedentary lifestyles or lifestyles that set us up for being sedentary, myself included. I work from home and I also take care of my toddler at home. So I am, not always moving around as much as I should be throughout the day. So this is not to say that those are not a part of health. Definitely they are. But I think the big missing piece of the puzzle, and maybe I kind of alluded to it earlier, is that your mental health and even stuff like your financial health and socioeconomic status, all of these things make up your health. So if you're only paying attention to your health and fitness, but you're neglecting your mental health, that's not taking care of your health. Maybe if you're taking care of your mental health and you're doing tons of self-care and you're going to the nail salon all the time and you feel like you're allowing yourself to have a little fun and shop and drink alcohol on the weekends and at night and stuff like that. And you're taking care of your mental health, but then you are completely neglecting meal prep. And so you only eat once a day, or you sit on the couch all day and eat toaster strudel and watch TV all day and don't see friends. That's not health either. That is not a judgment that I'm trying to convey. That's more so saying that just keep in mind that your health is not just eating vegetables and being miserable. It's a lot more to it than that. The last misconception, I'm trying to find a concise way to word, but essentially it's when someone sets, especially a health related goal, I find that it's always like, it has to be this big extreme goal or nothing at all. And the problem with that is that it sets us up for failure because we can't go hard realistically all the time. In the short term, maybe sometimes that can be a positive for some people if you're motivated by that, but I think it has to be realistic for your chapter of life. It has to be realistic in a sense of it's something that you can maintain for a long period of time. And ideally, it's something that's not going to burn you out when it's all said and done. A good example of this that I see all the time on social media is like 75 hard. Now, I'm not trying to knock the challenge or say that it's bad to do, but I don't see a whole lot of people finishing the challenge, which lets me know that it's something that really isn't a sustainable means of getting in your exercise. Again, I'm not knocking it. Like if you can achieve it, more power to you. I think that's amazing. But I think sometimes we need a little extra push. Like we need a goal that's going to push us and challenge us without making us feel like we're a total failure if we don't exercise 2 hours in a day, every single day for 75 days. Like that's not realistic for most people. Definitely not once you have kids too. Definitely not realistic for most people, but like for me, for example, I just said it's not realistic, especially if you're a parent. And I have actually, as a parent, been able to be pretty consistent, even with a toddler at home, running my own business and being pregnant. I've been able to stay pretty consistent with my workout schedule, and I'm proud of the amount that I fit in each and every week because I think I set the bar pretty fair for my chapter of life. And I don't try to like go above and beyond, like saying, I'm gonna do it 7 days a week for 1 hour at a time. I shoot for about 3 to 5 workouts every single week, about 20 to 30 minutes, sometimes 40 minutes, depending on what the workout is and how much time I have. And that's what I do. I just stick to it. And of course, there's times where we'll always challenge ourselves or give ourselves a little bit of a higher goal so we can strive for something versus just staying stagnant. That's totally fine. But I think you just have to be realistic with yourself of what's going to work right in this moment and what's just going to cause discouragement. I hope that makes sense. Leo just woke up, so I feel like he has like the perfect timing. He always likes to time his wake ups like right at the end of my videos. So I guess that works out. But hopefully some of these misconceptions or common mistakes are helpful for you to reflect on. That's the whole purpose, not to shame anybody. And let me know what videos or chats you would like to have in the future on this channel about nutrition, blood sugar, or fitness. I love to talk about all of those topics and answer your questions and just have, healthy chats about how to be realistic with your health, like this one. So thanks so much for watching. I'll leave a video on the screen that YouTube thinks you'll like, and I will see you in the next video. Bye guys.